Howdy, my name is Nachi Sasuke. Welcome back to Let's Read the SCP Foundation Wiki. In the last episode, I believe we read Humans Go Home, Double Word Scare, the Islamic Republic of Eastern Samothrace, the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and Bovine Guard, Icon and Guards. I don't know why I was trying to guess, because I did actually label last episode which numbers I did, and I could have just checked. I'm just stupid. But in this episode, we're going to be doing Mellified Man, the Coupon Cutter, or Coupon Cutter, depending on how you say it, Floating ICBM, Centralian Fire Demon, and a lovely bunch of coconuts, deedly. So, let's see what a Mellified Man is. Well, Euclid. SCP-1176 is to be kept within the sarcophagus it was recovered in, fully submerged in one, in a secure climate-controlled observation room at Site-73. It is not to be removed from one for any period of time longer than is necessary to conduct essential research or replace monitoring equipment, in no case exceeding 6 hours. 1176 is to be monitored by EEG at all times, I read the wrong line, when not fully submerged in one for any sudden changes in brain activity. Any unexpected changes in one production are to be noted. Excess of one is to be drained from the sarcophagus using the attached faucet once per day or as necessary to prevent overflow, and is to be destroyed or sent for testing immediately. SCP-1176-1 is to be transported and stored in vessels, clearly indicating that it is not a food product and is inedible. One is not to be consumed by any incompatible person except for testing purposes. All requests to issue 1176-1 as an emergency field ration are preemptively denied, regardless of individual compatibility, pending a full ethics committee review. Alright then. Description: SCP-1176 is the mummified corpse of a human male, presumed to have been approximately 35 years of age at the time of death. Severe tissue degradation has made DNA examination of 1176 impossible. Based on contextual evidence, it is assumed to have been of Arabian ancestry and to have died in the 10th to 11th century AD. 1176 is clinically dead and does not display any indications of respiration, circulation, or metabolism. The brain, which is largely intact in spite of general tissue degradation, exhibits a constant level of electrical activity consistent with Stage 3 non-rapid eye movement, deep sleep. In place of all bodily fluids that would have been found in a living human being, 1176 contains a fluid of viscous consistency and golden color designated 1. Testing of 1 has found it to be chemically identical to clover honey produced by the Anatolian honeybee, Apis mellifera anatoliaca? Yeah. SCP-1176-1 is exuded from the pores at a variable rate depending on environmental conditions. When kept fully or mostly submerged, it is typically when stored within its sarcophagus, rate of 1 production is approximately 0.2 liters per hour. When it is not submerged, production increases exponentially over time, see Incident 1 log. The quantity of 1 contained within 1176 itself has not been documented to increase or decrease at any time, regardless of the rate of production. 1 has been determined to be edible by human beings possessing an AB+ blood type, and possesses properties consistent with a highly concentrated nutritional supplement. A dose of 1 15 milliliters in volume contains approximately 2,500 kcals and significant quantities of essential vitamins and nutrients, making it highly effective as an emergency ration or staple foodstuff. Tests conducted on D-Class personnel indicate that 1 consumption by compatible persons is effective in preventing physical sensations of hunger for 14 to 18 hours after consumption, and bears no long-term side effects. Okay. Persons of a non-AB+ blood type, upon consuming any amount of 1 greater than 0.5 milliliters, begin exhibiting symptoms of a severe allergic reaction within 4 to 10 hours of consumption. Acute hemolysis, followed by renal failure and death, has occurred in 98.7% of all tests where an incompatible person was fed 1. Symptoms of 1 consumption among incompatible test subjects are consistent with symptoms of persons given blood transfusions of a type incompatible with their body chemistry. At the time of its discovery, 1176 was stored within a stone sarcophagus of late Hellenistic style. The lid, sides, and interior of the sarcophagus are inscribed with texts in late Egyptian hieroglyphics, largely consisting of ceremonial texts and spells regarding the protection of the person entombed within, and hagiographic descriptions of various gods, and an extinct and thus far untranslated dialect of Proto-Arabic. In a large section at the foot of the coffin, The original inscriptions have been obliterated and replaced with two separate inscriptions in classical Arabic. See addendum for translation. A hole has been drilled into the sarcophagus near one end, into which a copper pipe and spigot has been fitted. It is hypothesized that the spigot was installed within the last 100 years by the persons previously in possession of 1176 for the purpose of facilitating the removal of one from the sarcophagus. The sarcophagus itself possesses no anomalous properties. SCP-1176 was acquired by the Foundation in 1985, following a raid on the facility in Asmara, Eritrea, then Ethiopia, owned by the Mana Charitable Foundation. Foundation assets in the region had identified the facility as the source of shipments of honey which had been widely distributed to famine-stricken regions of Ethiopia, resulting in the deaths of approximately something thousand civilians from symptoms resembling acute hemolysis. How the MCF came into possession of 1176 has not been determined to date. Okay, so, text of Arabic inscriptions on the sarcophagus. Okay, so it looks like some of it's in Arabic and some of it's in English. Abdallah ibn Salah ibn Ayub ibn Nasir, 15th son of the great Sikh illegible, was put to the fast of honey on the 1st of Rajab in the year of Hijra 3 illegible, between 922 and 1022 AD in the Gregorian calendar, and died on the 15th of Ramadan. The great Imam al-Yusuf has sealed him within the ancient vessel, marked with the signs decreed by the ancients, to ferment in honey for 100 years and bring aid to the people in time of need. Text of the second inscription. Beware, Imam, for the mark of Iblis is upon this one. In the year of the Hijra, 573, 1195 AD in the Gregorian calendar, the Imam al-Malik ordered this vessel opened, thereby to feed the people during time of great famine. Many jars were filled and delivered to the sheikh and his court, to the great imams of the mosques, and to the people. And the following day, a great many people fell ill with a terrible fever, and none of them lived. But the sheikh and his brothers and his sons, who ate heartily of the cursed nectar, were all of them unharmed. Those who lived declared the sheikh and his family guilty of sorcery and illegible. But when the people came to destroy the body taken from the vessel, they found it standing upright and dancing about, screaming and mocking them. Al-Malik has decreed that a foul jinn has been sent by the Shaitan himself to corrupt this instrument of healing, and has decreed that it be sealed within this vessel until the last day. May God strike down any who would break these seals. I've been reading my way through the Dune books lately, and I saw Shaitan, and I was like, oh, okay, the worm then. Interesting. Incident 1176-1. On blankety blank 2000 something, an experiment was conducted to determine the upward limits of the rate at which 1176-1 can be produced. 1176 was removed from its sarcophagus and placed upon a graded surface designed to drain all one produced away rather than allowing it to accumulate. After increasing to a rate of 1.2 liters per hour after the first hour, the rate at which production accelerated continued to increase by approximately 1 liter per hour, reaching a production of approximately 55.7 liters per hour. After approximately 10.5 hours, a sudden spike in brain activity was detected and 1176 became conscious. 1176 opened its eyelids and began flailing wildly and attempted to engage in distressed vocalizations, and attempted to crawl towards one of the walls of the test chamber. Due to the atrophied state of its internal organs and musculature, it is speculated that 1176 was unable to see or derive any meaningful sensory data from its environment during this period, and was unable to speak coherently due to the degradation of its tongue and palate. As the staff were concerned that 1176 movements would damage itself, 4 junior research personnel were instructed to manually restrain it and sedate it. During the attempt, 1176 jerked its left arm violently, resulting in its hand being severed at the wrist. After attempts to sedate 1176 using gas and intramuscular injection were unsuccessful, research personnel were instructed to return it to its sarcophagus and set the lid in place. 1176 was heard continuing to vocalize and to strike the interior of the sarcophagus with its limbs and head for approximately 3 hours, after which time it ceased activity and returned to its previous state. Subsequent examination has detected multiple bone fractures induced during the period of activity, as well as several previously unnoted fractures speculated to have been caused by an earlier such state. The severed hand has continued to exude one at rates commensurate with the rest of the specimen and is currently being contained separately for further research. Well, dang. Okay, next up is the coupon cutter, which is safe and appears to be an elderly lady. appears to be. SCP-1177 is currently housed in the containment quarters of Site-40. A staffed closed-circuit camera monitors 1177 at all times. If 1177 attempts to practice self-harm, alert the head researcher as soon as possible. For standard humanoid containment precautions, personnel are to be searched before entering the chamber. Personnel are subject to an additional search upon exiting the chamber. SCP-1177 is a Latin American female of indeterminate age who possesses the ability to exchange several pieces of her own body for goods and services. The similarity between this ability and that possessed by SCP-2855 has been noted. Investigation into a common source of both phenomena, or if one is a variant of the other, is ongoing. Although she appears elderly, this may be a result of her long-term abuse of her anomalous property and lifestyle. Interviews reveal that prior to entering Foundation custody, she had spent much of her adult life as a homeless vagrant, and SCP-1177 was discovered in the redacted casino in Kansas after she bribed the doorman into allowing her entry and made several attempts to play a nickel slot machine without the use of casino tokens before being apprehended by security and delivered to paramedics. Foundation agents alerted to these events posed as employees of a local mental health facility and were given custody of the woman without incident. The slot machine and the rug under it were submitted for cleaning. Possessions found on 1177's person upon containment included 1 costume jewelry ring, 2 plastic earrings, 1 toothbrush, 1 comb, fine tooth, 3 empty wrappers belonging to redacted fast food chain, 2 instant lottery tickets scratched off with no redemption value, 1 pocket knife, 1 washcloth bloodstained, 1 movie ticket stub, 1 piece of ham kept in an additional fast food chain wrapper, 1 16-ounce bottle of rubbing alcohol with half the contents remaining. These objects were evaluated and discarded. Physical examination following containment revealed signs of self-mutilation covering her body, including numerous scars, healing wounds, missing teeth, and patches of hair. 1177's 5th toes and right 4th fingers are missing. Her right middle finger has been crudely amputated after the lower joint and has the upper joint of her right index finger. Tissue samples used by 1177 are most commonly strips of flesh from the arm or leg, irregularly cut off using a pocket knife or other implement, removed and cleaned of blood using a washcloth before being presented. Those who were offered a section of 1177's body recognize it as being detached human flesh, but do not manifest revulsion or surprise. Instead, they accept the flesh as an alternate form of payment like a voucher or debit card. This varies in effectiveness based on several factors, including the subject's normal likeliness of accepting alternate forms of payment, the size of the payment expected, and the amount and type of flesh given. Okay, so incident log. As demonstrated by an attempted containment breach on July 24th something, 1177 is capable of using body parts as a form of bribery. During food delivery, the woman gave the attendant redacted, which she had apparently gnawed off without detection, in exchange for release from containment quarters. According to testimony, 1177 quickly maneuvered to the front lobby of Site-40. The woman borrowed a pair of scissors from the receptionist before attempting to exit, falling, and requesting that the front doors be unlocked. The desk attendant denied the request and called for a security officer. Security arrived. 1177 was attempting to use scissors to sever the remainder of her left ring finger. Experiment log 1. On August the 6th something, an experiment was conducted in which 2 strips of flesh, each measuring a square inch, were taken from 1177's leg, sanitized, and given to researchers. Dr. Raines purchased a hamburger at the Site-24 cafeteria but did not consume it, citing loss of appetite. Research assistant Clark took his sample of 1177 to a local convenience store and attempted to exchange it for a pack of cigarettes. When the shopkeeper asked for his ID, Clark displayed the piece of flesh and was met with revulsion. Hoping to avoid further argument, the research assistant left for a bookstore where he successfully bought a used book with the sample "Stress Fractures Keeping Your Job from Getting to You" on clearance for $3. Since then, further examination has yielded the following transactions. 1 piece of muscle tissue, half an ounce by weight, for 3 bags of redacted brand chocolate candies priced at 50 cents each. Successful. 1 lock of hair for 1 comic book redacted, volume 1, issue 3, priced at $2.99. Transaction failed. Operator considered the payment insufficient. 1 lock of hair for 1 comic book, NFL Super Pro, volume 1, issue 1, priced at $3 for $1. Transaction successful. 1 2-ounce vial of blood for 1 bag of redacted brand charcoal briskets, priced at $6.99. Transaction failed. The convenience store clerk considered the payment insufficient. 2 2-ounce vials of blood for 1 bag of redacted brand charcoal briskets. A price at $6.99. Transaction successful. The researcher was given 3 dimes and 1 nickel in change. 1 piece of skin measuring 9 square inches in area for 1 gold-plated necklace. Successful. The transaction was made at a pawn shop. As of August the 10th blank, the piece of skin is framed and on display in one of the shop's cabinets. Test 2. On August the 12th something, researcher McAmes stood on 5th Street in downtown Redacted from 121 to 152. During this time, he approached numerous pedestrians and requested that they make change for him for the subway from 1 of 10 samples of 1177 stamped 45 through 55, each half chunk of skin and flesh taken from 1177's abdomen. Each person who accepted a sample was tracked by a Foundation task force until a transaction was made which used their piece of tissue. The following results were recorded. 45, placed in a tip jar of a coffee house. 46, used an electronics store to purchase the PC game Redacted. 47, used to partially cover the bill at an Irish tavern. 48, placed in an envelope and mailed. 49, given to a homeless man. When this occurred, the man became very agitated and shouted unintelligibly at the subject until he was out of sight. 51, deposited in a savings account at the local branch of Wachovia Bank. 52, placed in a dancer's top at the Redacted Gentlemen's Club. 53, exchanged for chips at Redacted Casino. 54, possessor evaded tracking behind an abandoned storage building. When the Foundation agent continued pursuit, he was met with gunfire. Agent disengaged. Further investigation recommended. 55, given in the offering plate at the Redacted Lutheran Church. Conclusion? Samples of 1177 are not single-use, although their value may not retain consistent among transactions. The only method of estimating how much of 1177 remains in circulation is through noting the amount of scar tissue and number of open wounds on 1177. A special note is that at no point during any experiment did the subjects other than the informed researchers display awareness of their composition. Experiment log 3. Experiment 1177-3 is currently in process with a more long-term focus. The intention of measuring the age at which 1177 samples become inert. As of March the 18th something, sample 71, which was removed 6 months prior to this date, retains value in lieu of legal tender or as a voucher for other transactions. Okay, that was weird. Floating ICBM. I do not off the top of my head know what ICBM means, but I would imagine it's going to tell me. It's Keter! Been a while since we got one of those! An area of exclusion has been created around 1178's active area. Any human or vehicle entering this area is to be immediately terminated or destroyed. Security personnel patrolling this area from the ground must maintain a state of radio silence at all times. Aircraft patrolling the area must never move closer than 2 kilometers to 1178's area of exclusion. Observational equipment must predate 1938 and be constantly manned by Foundation personnel. If 1178 shows any signs of movement towards the perimeter, it is to be considered a containment breach and a possible apocalyptic scenario. Loudspeaker units set up around 1178 must constantly create broadcasts of varying nature, including fabricated news reports of limited nuclear war between NATO states that possess nuclear armaments and the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China. In addition, there are to be reports that indicating that the Midwestern United States has been devastated in a retaliatory strike and that the U.S. Army has invaded the Kamchatka Peninsula. False broadcasts indicating troop movement and communications in the Soviet and United States Armed Forces. False civilian broadcasts corresponding to the above events. Television signals for programs broadcast between 1962 and 1981 in the Soviet Union, and advertisements for consumer products such as gas masks, radiation suits, and firearms capable of being used by a child or parent. In the event that 1178 begins to accelerate, all personnel are to initiate the Prussia Protocol. In the event of a Prussia Protocol failure, Overwatch Command is to be set on high alert for the imminent possibility of an end-of-the-world scenario. Alright? Description. SCP-1178 is a Soviet-era RT-2 intercontinental ballistic missile, NATO reporting name SS-5 Skin, manufactured sometime between 1962 and 1967. 1178 is suspended exactly 1.34 kilometers in the air above Blank, a former Soviet missile base. The rockets will activate intermittently, however it has never been observed to move outside a breach event. If any vehicle or mammalian organism approaches Blank or 1178 from a distance of 200 kilometers or less, or if a broadcast contrary to standard broadcast is made in its range, it will begin to slowly accelerate itself from its position above the base. It moves very slowly, with the highest speed ever obtained being an estimated 1.6 kilometers per hour, achieved during its initial activation event. 1178's acceleration is to be considered a breach event, as it will cause 1178's secondary effect to initiate. The initiation of the breach protocol must be done within 3 minutes of its acceleration in order to be effective. The secondary effect will initiate in the event that the missile is able to accelerate to a speed greater than 0.2 kilometers. The early nuclear detection systems, which apparently is SCP-1984, of any former Soviet state will begin to indicate an imminent nuclear strike. Starting with radar stations, all equipment possessed by these nations will begin indicating a massive nuclear strike coming from any nuclear-capable NATO nation. When these states have gone on alert for the possibility of a nuclear strike, the equipment of any nuclear-capable NATO nations will also begin to indicate an imminent nuclear strike from any country currently affected by 1178. Note that 1178 will only affect the early detection equipment of these countries and does not affect the actual launch devices or the commanders in charge of said devices. The Prisha Protocol calls for sleeper agents within nuclear detection organizations in various NATO and former Soviet states to sabotage the early detection systems of the countries they are working for. This is said to create a plausible explanation for why these systems showed false readings. Once this has been achieved, personnel are to ignore or cast doubt on any readings detected by equipment affected by 1178. In the event that one nation launches a nuclear attack, the response systems of said recipient nations are authorized to be disabled by Foundation agents to minimize the damage created by a nuclear strike and avert an XK scenario. Prior to 1178's containment, several instances of near-accidental nuclear strikes by world powers were reported to the Foundation by assets integrated into the Soviet GRU and the American CIA, which was the coldest war hub, leading to the discovery and recognition of 1178 as an anomaly. A partial list of incidents caused by it have been included in this report. Well, I guess it's in that report, not this report. Object history. On blankety blank blank, 1178 was launched, which was reported as a test by the Soviet Union. During the launch, GRU Division P reports say that 1178 ceased to accelerate and unexpectedly detonated once it reached the height of 1.33 kilometers. At the same time, early warning nuclear detection equipment in the USSR began to display an imminent nuclear strike by the US. It is not known why the USSR did not retaliate in response to these readings. Approximately 6 days after the incident occurred, the GRU evacuated and then demolished the base and established a permanent observation center. Recovered records indicate that 1178 was launched at an object present in the atmosphere over Siberia, but the appearance and properties of this object are unknown, as all information on the object was destroyed in 1991. After an unknown period of time, 1178 began affecting the area around the base, leading to its second activation event. Following this event, an area of exclusion that currently exists around it was established. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, GRU personnel began broadcasting the signals currently used by SCP personnel to contain 1176. It is believed that research within 1178, I said 76, didn't I? 78 had led them to create an elaborate post-war hoax in order to keep 1178 pacified. Research notes recovered from the GRU theorized that 1178's only motivation to activate was to irradiate the Earth through nuclear war, and if such a war had already occurred, it would remain inert until another civilization capable of conducting a nuclear war arose. So it's just a sentient missile that's trying to force nuclear war to happen. Okie dokie. Next up is Centralian Fire Demon, which is also Keter. Okay. And the picture is: warning, danger, underground mine fire. Walking or driving in this area could result in serious injury or death. Dangerous gases are present. Ground is prone to sudden collapse. Local sign: warning, area 179's restricted status. Image taken October the 4th, 2006. The sign no longer stands. Now, the special containment procedures used to say SCP-1179 is apparently dormant, encased in the bedrock under research site blank. Apart from simple monitoring and standard research safety protocols, no additional containment is deemed necessary at this time. Edited in presumably May of 1962. That, or it's just the 5th of some other month, since this says 4 October 2006 and this is 5 blank to the 1962. I don't know. Due to the subterranean nature, self-ambulatory capabilities, and physical properties of 1179, enforcement of containment has to date proven impossible. Oh boy. Project Tartarus is charged with continuous research into developing additional practical containment measures for 1179. It is speculated that it is capable of being destroyed, as wounds inflicted by heavy ordnance during the evacuation attempt of Expedition 1179-6 were later observed to have not healed. To date, isolation and observation of 1179 has mostly proven sufficient, as it has demonstrated no efforts to move above ground and has limited itself to a roughly 2-kilometer radius from its original location of discovery. In the event that 1179 should be observed to move beyond recorded areas, personnel to immediately notify O5 Command. The land above 1179 has been designated Area 179 by the Foundation. It used to say, due to the proximity of civilian population center which cannot be moved, it is to only employ low-yield nuclear failsafe devices. Now it says, the general public has become aware of 1179 and believes the cover story that it is in fact an anthracite coal mine fire caused by a trash dump fire. It used to say, Foundation personnel to infiltrate and coordinate all efforts to extinguish the blaze for the protection of both involved civilians and 1179. All efforts to extinguish the blaze have ceased. And it also used to say, civilians living above 1179 has suffered adverse health effects due to the byproducts of the fire, including carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and insufficient oxygen levels. Civilians are no longer permitted in Area 179. Effects on civilians are within tolerable levels, with the populace generally unaware of the scale of it. Following the incident with Todd Domboski and the associated quantity of press coverage, the Foundation is to work to relocate civilians from Area 179. Well, Area 179 has been claimed by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania under eminent domain. Are they implying that the coal fire that inspired Silent Hill as an SCP, is that what this is? Is that what this is? It has subsequently been closed to all unauthorized personnel within the Pennsylvania government, with the Pennsylvania government enforcing evictions of unauthorized residents. A bunker has been constructed in a geologically stable section of 179, allowing for Foundation operations in the area and monitoring of 1179. Foundation personnel, security personnel, along with local law enforcement, are to coordinate to prevent civilians from entering 179 in accordance with warnings issued by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. Personnel within Area 179 are to restrict their movement to approved areas due to the geological instability caused by 1179. Description: SCP-1179 has not been clearly and scientifically observed since May 1962 during incident CB 1962 blankety blank. Okay, so I guess it was May the something. The original file description of SCP-1179 is as follows. SCP-1179 appears to be a giant, vaguely humanoid figure carved from unknown volcanic rock. In one hand it holds a whip, in the other a sword. Its face has vaguely human features, including a long beard, though it has 2 large horns like those of a ram flanking its face. SCP-1179 measures over 30 meters from head to toe, with shoulders over 8 meters wide. It resembles a carving of the Norse Eld Jotun Surtur, the giant guarding the frontier of the Norse fire realm of Muspel. Dating to the stratum encasing 1179 indicates the dating of the stratum encasing 1179. It dates to the Mississippian subperiod of the Carboniferous period, approximately 359.2 to 318.1 million years ago. This age is consistent with the geological age of this region. 1179 has since demonstrated the ability to change shape at will and to become invisible and without form, appearing as a giant flying shade. Photographic evidence has failed to produce a conclusive image of 1179. Due to the inexplicable camera feed disruptions, operator panic, and physical destruction of cameras, expeditionary teams have described 1179 as having hellfire for eyes and generally having great height. Its body often is seen as a combination of fire, smoke, and hardening lava. From there, the descriptions begin to diverge wildly. Survivors generally describe its head as monstrous, with some mentioning curved horns consistent with the original form of 1179. Others argue it has fangs larger than a man's arms. Still, others state that 1179 has neither horns nor fangs, and its face is encircled by flames which reach down into a long beard of fire. Eyewitnesses cannot agree whether or not it has wings. Most agree that it is usually armed with a multi-tailed whip of flame and a glowing sword of fire several meters in length, though it will at times appear with either the whip or the sword or neither. Though of great size, it is apparently capable of moving both quickly and quietly. Those few who survive encounters with 1179 generally describe it as smelling of rotten eggs and old chimneys. Chemical analysis of air samples taken from 1179's breath have shown exceptionally high concentrations of carbon monoxide and sulfur dioxide. Before I go to the item history, Addendum 1. Research is pending into harnessing the anthracite coal fires as a means of energy production, as they will likely continue burning for the foreseeable future. See Project Vulcan's Forge or Project Lead Dr. Crane or Area 179 Director Wilson for further details. And then Addendum 2 is images related to its area of effect. So, damage caused by 1179 to former Pennsylvania Route 61, a hillside area which has collapsed due to it, noxious gases rising from a sinkhole in Area 179. So yeah, it does definitely seem like what this is. Before I get to the item history, it definitely seems like what this is supposed to be is just them saying that a creature resembling Surtur from the Norse fire realm of Muspel is walking around in Pennsylvania, and they're blaming it on coal fires. The description of it does actually sound like a Balrog of Morgoth, though, from Lord of the Rings. Between the whip and the fire sword and the horns and all that, it does sound like it's a Balrog. I don't know. Anyway, what's the item history? The item history is long. It was discovered in 1871, 5 years after anthracite coal mining was begun in the area. It was nicknamed the Sleeping Stone Giant. The mine shaft in which it was discovered belonged to Mr. Sean O'Malley, a member of the Molly Maguires, an Irish-American secret society whose members were predominantly coal miners in Pennsylvania. The society kept the Sleeping Stone Giant hidden away, a closely guarded secret. Though the Molly Maguires were dismantled in the late 1870s, the Giant's guardians managed to escape prosecution. The Sleeping Stone Giant came to the attention of the Foundation in 1920-something when operatives were conducting a routine background check into the prospective agent Ian O'Malley, grandson of the original Mr. O'Malley. The land above the Giant's mine shaft was purchased by a foundation front company and research site blank was established. In May 1962, residents of a nearby town lit a trash fire in a landfill which had been created from an abandoned coal mine. Those responsible for garbage disposal followed insufficient safety protocols, and a seam of anthracite coal was ignited. The seam was small, and Foundation geologists have determined it would have burned out in approximately 2 years had it not run under research site blank. The fire reached 1179, which promptly reanimated in the presence of the fire. Upon reanimation, 1179 killed all Foundation personnel at research site blank and significantly damaged the site's bunker. It subsequently retreated into the honeycomb of coal mines and caverns in the area, igniting subsequent anthracite coal fires. The mines, caverns, and surrounding countryside was designated Area 179, though due to the nearby town's civilian population of several thousand individuals, standard area construction protocols for keter containment could not be observed. These were modified to fit the circumstance. 5 separate expeditionary teams were sent in to capture 1179 between 1962 and 1970, though none were successful. They did determine that it had proven capable of expanding the caverns to vast proportions and unknown depths. Satellite imagery and evidence of noxious gases and ground collapse contradict these accounts, and the photographic evidence which confirms them, indicating that the mine flares are only burning in an area covering roughly 400 acres or 1.62 square kilometers. The discrepancy between the sizes of the caverns has to date not been reconciled. In 1970, Foundation geologists determined that the subterranean fires caused by 1179 would remain burning for in excess of 250 years. With Foundation personnel successful in perpetuating the half-truth of the original cause of the mine fires, and unsuccessful both in recovering 1179 for removal and transfer to an alternate location and extinguishing the blazes it had caused, the decision was made to instead relocate the nearby town. Concurrently, Project Charteris was formally begun to develop and refine permanent special containment procedures for 1179, and determined means to extinguish the anthracite fires. Foundation personnel have worked constantly in the area to ensure the continuation of the mine fire cover story and prevent civilians from encountering 1179. though this proved increasingly difficult as the local situation continued to deteriorate. In 1981, 12-year-old local Tom Dubosky fell into a sinkhole, approximately 1.25 meters wide by 46 meters deep, which opened beneath his feet in his backyard. He was saved by his cousin, 14-year-old Eric Wolfgang. The plume of hot steam billowing from the hole was measured as containing a lethal level of carbon monoxide, and chemical analysis matched the steam to samples of 1179's breath. Spurred by the worsening mine fire and by covert lobbying by Foundation political contacts, in 1984, the United States Congress allocated funds in excess of $42 million to relocate civilian residents from the area. At the suggestion of undercover agent Blank, Pennsylvania Governor Bob Casey claimed eminent domain on all properties in the borough, condemning all buildings within. Foundation personnel ensured that the subsequent legal effort by residents to have the decision reversed were met with failure. As a result, full keter area containment protocols have finally could be observed. Whew! Okay, and that brings us to a lovely bunch of coconuts, which better not be keter. I swear they better not be keter. Okay, they're safe. A security camera has been mounted near the transplantation site. Transplantation? Footage should be reviewed for changes on a weekly basis. Hard hats are mandatory for those working in close proximity to 1180. All instances of fallen or new growth should be promptly reported to the head of botanical research. Description: SCP-1180 is identical in appearance to Cocos nucifera, the coconut palm. The anomaly was discovered when a research team was dispatched to investigate local rumors of a possessed palm. Witnesses claimed that the plant would intentionally drop its sizable drupes on the heads of unsuspecting passerby. The specimen was found growing in relative isolation on a strip of shore less than 16 kilometers from the outer perimeter of Research Sector 9. 1180 grows and fruits at the same rate as comparable specimens of Cocos nucifera. The organism's only outwardly anomalous trait is a rattling or knocking sound that emanates from its fruits. These noises grow louder as the drupes reach maturity. Radiography results are identical to those of normal coconuts. Tests with human subjects suggest that the organism is equipped with an unusual adaptation for preservation and propagation. While the tree itself is vulnerable to damage, subjects instructed to open, crack, or otherwise damage its offspring experience significant emotional distress. Addendum: excerpt from Agent Gas Recovery Log. Research team equipped with suitable headgear meets with no accidents while examining the organism. A subdued rattling, described by the recovery team as knocking sounds, can be heard issuing from inside the ripening coconuts. Exudated root ball densely packed with worms of an unknown species. Several days of observation have yielded similar results. Decision made to transplant the palm to Sector 9 grounds for further tests. Transplant accomplished without mishap. Okay? So the access here is restricted to level 3 personnel or higher, but addendum says the largest instance of the new growths, designated 8, now measures 110 millimeters in diameter. Caretakers have reported knocking sounds coming from inside the husk. So, okay, that's a pretty long one. It's not that long. Subjects are provided with tools and instructed to remove the husk of a coconut, designated 1, recently cut from 1180. Majority visibly distressed by the knocking sounds from within. Several describe a feeling of horror. A few describe empathetic feelings, always with the desire to remove the object outside. During 6 consecutive tests, D3767, a subject with exceptionally low empathy scores, finally succeeds in rupturing and peeling away the husk. No immediate adverse effects observed. August the 7th something. At 2 p.m., after removing the husk, subject seems reluctant to crack open the shell. The rattling has grown perceivably louder, sometimes slowing almost to a stop before beginning again with renewed violence. The subject claims to feel the vibrations of the knocking and claims that 1183 has a face. Subject refuses to remain in the same room with the object, eventually subdued and removed for observation. At 4 p.m., other subjects are instructed to photograph and describe their reactions to dehusked specimen. All react with similar displays of reluctance and increasing uneasiness. D8084, another subject with significantly low empathy scores, is instructed to crack open the already dehusked 3. Suitable precautions are taken by observing research team. Using a hammer, the disposable dude manages to split the fruit open, cracking it into several large pieces. The white meat appears slightly rotten, kernels otherwise empty. On August the 8th, at 1:34 in the morning, New growths have appeared on 1180, apparently in place of those removed for testing. None of the specimens have been observed to rattle. At 4:50 in the morning, 8084's body discovered standing rigidly upright in the center of his cell. The corpse had been decapitated. Site of injury is wrinkled and puckered, causing cause of trauma undetermined. The head has not been recovered. So that sounds like since he killed the thing, it probably killed him back, and the new coconut is probably his head or something. And it sounds like because of how the containment protocols work, it is only safe because it's a tree. If it had the ability to move, it would probably be Euclid. If I'm understanding that right. I never know if I'm understanding that right. Anyway, that about does it for this episode of Let's Read the SCP Foundation Wiki. In the next episode, we'll be going from 1181 to 1185. If you like this video, a like and a subscribe will be groovy. If you didn't, you don't need to do either one of those things, and I will see y'all in the next one. Later.